Senator Feinstein introduces bill to require proof of vaccine, negative test, or documentation of recovery for domestic flights. The U.S. Air Travel Public Safety Act would order the Department of Health and Human Services and the Federal Aviation Administration to develop national vaccination verification standards and procedures. The text of the act says that it is necessary to reduce passenger, crew member, and airport personnel risk of exposure to COVID-19, decrease the risk of transmission of COVID-19 on board aircraft in the United States and to United States destination communities through air travel, and protect children and other vulnerable individuals by preventing further spread of COVID-19 in the U.S. Under the bill, a passenger would have to provide the air carrier with documentation demonstrating they are fully vaccinated, provide proof of negative pre-departure, or alternatively, written or electronic documentation of recovery from COVID-19 after previous infection. All right, well, that last part, at least I can give some respect to, but across the board, I just don't have much respect for this at all.
I think it doesn't go far enough. Let's put a scale like there when you check in. Let's just check people's BMI. If it's too high, you can't get on the plane. I mean, it's about saving lives.
Actually, you're right.
That's a great point.
So there's actually an issue with overweight people on airplanes, because when an individual comes on a plane, they actually there's a load manifest. I used to work with these, and you write down average weight of cargo. Depending on how many people are in the plane and how much luggage in the plane, the pilot has to behave differently and move people. Sometimes there were issues where there was like very little luggage, and they're like, okay, that's going to displace the weight and put all the weight in the front. So they'd actually ask people to move to even out that weight, things like that. So yes, people would complain because they'd be like, sir, you're overweight. You have to occupy 2 seats because we can't have the displacement on the plane this way. People didn't like it.
So what are they allowed to, like, if someone has the flu, can they not fly? You can fly sick. You always have been able to.
It's kind of a dick move, but I guess some people, are in a bind, and they can kick you off a plane for any reason. They're plane. Private company.
Well, they're not. I mean, that's what we're seeing is they're not, right? I mean, there's an example of companies that aren't really private companies. It's airlines, right? They're not. The fact that the government can do this is an example of how they're not remotely private companies. If we had private flight, think about how awesome it would be. It'd be like, and not that Megabus is like the most awesome experience. It'd be way closer to Megabus. There'd be, tens of thousands of airports. You'd fly out, you'd drive out to the middle of nowhere. You'd get on the plane 20 minutes after you got there. You wouldn't have to show ID to anyone. There'd be all kinds of flights. It would be way more decentralized.
Oh, yeah.
Some random pilot can, rent a plane and fly you places. That's what a free market in air flight would look like. We don't have anything that remotely looks like a free market.
You'd also be standing up. So they've actually experimented with this.
Yeah.
There are seats where you're slightly sitting down. They're like straight up, and they have a little like hump on it where you can lean against, but you stand the whole time. And they're like, we can get way more people on the planes if we do this.
Well, I mean, give you know what? Like, that can feel awkward and distant, but just give people choices. That's the point. Like, if people want to fly on a flight where everyone is vaccinated, let the market provide that service. If people don't give a shit, let the market provide that service. When the government is stepping in and saying this is the way that planes have to run, that's not a choice. That's the government coming in, the gun in the room, and saying you have to operate your airlines this way.
You could do a roller coaster flight as long as it's safe, where every so often the plane just drops a little bit and then keeps going and drops, as long as it's safe. And then you get the roller coaster feel on your flight.
That's perfect.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, if people, why don't they do vax and no vax flights?
Sure.
But it's public health.
This is the thing.
We don't want to spread COVID.
Travel should not be a privatized, in my opinion. The roads, the railroads, the planes should not be privatized because someone can be like, no, you can't travel because I don't like you. I don't like what your dad said to me 20 years ago. You're never allowed. And then he's like, all his friends that own all the other companies are like, yeah, okay, him and his family forever.
That's
They're never
a problem
allowed.
of monopolization.
Yeah.
Which is maybe an argument for roads, but I don't think it's an argument against planes, because planes, it's so easy. There's so much space. We're not running out of space. There's no monopoly on it. There's no reason there shouldn't be 100,000 possible ways that you could fly. Like, think about how many people are Uber drivers. Like, flying would look like Uber, much closer to Uber. Not necessarily where you're getting on your plane in 10 minutes, but it would look much closer to that, where you have this vast variety of providers. It's heavily centralized in a small number of companies because the federal government made it work that way.
Well, they actually are doing like Uber for planes. There's companies where it's a private plane, and then you basically say, here's where I'm going to this place.
The FAA shut some of these down, by the way.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. It's a story to check out. There were some successful companies doing this. The FAA came in and said that's illegal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Well, that's the government, I guess.
I guess they think of planes as weapons because they're so big and move so fast, they can cause destruction if they ram into stuff. So they're treating them kind of like dangerous weapons.
You're gonna what this basically means. What they're doing is all putting pressure on anyone who opposes their agenda, because, for the most part, most people are like, oh, the vaccine's fine, I guess, but it's really a decision between you and your doctor. That's what they're eliminating. They're taking your private choice out of the equation, and they're doing it in a way that most people are probably fine with. And what I mean by that is most people are like, I get it. Vaccines are fine. They see the data, they see the news. There's an argument. Some people don't like it. But for the most part, they're like, well, I get it, right? There's a pandemic. There's a crisis. You want to get a vaccine? Fine. The problem is they always use issues like this to erode your rights. They're never going to come out and demand you do something ridiculous, like you can no longer have shoes. And people would be like, what? You can't do that. No, they do something where they're like, in this one instance where it seems reasonable, you'll agree with us. And then once you give us the ability, we'll do it for everything. So this is going to turn into a negative test. But then it's going to turn into a negative test for everything. Then it's going to be like you can't travel if you're sick in any way.
That's insane. Yeah. 15 days to slow the spread just because we don't want to overload the hospitals, but we know it's going to be here. 15 days is all we need.
They want to stop people from flying.
It's gone so haywire.
Look, AOC said they wanted to stop people from flying. That was part of the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
And it seems like, I'll tell you this, they're exploiting a crisis in every way possible to stop people from using. Look, the market's collapsing, right? We've got economic crisis, money being printed like crazy. People are fleeing cities, shipping containers all jammed up in California, unable to come in. They don't want you buying stuff. They don't want you making stuff. They don't want you burning fuels. They don't want you flying on planes. They don't want you driving. And so you got all these people in the cities locked in their little cubicle apartments, losing their minds.
Yeah. Well, I think one aspect of this is like politics is about tribal dominance. And the best way to dominate someone else is when you can say, this is actually for the good of everyone. And that's why this situation has reached this kind of front is Democrats want to dominate Republicans. Republicans want to dominate Democrats. And this gives the Democrats a chance to dominate the others in this way that is ostensibly pro-social. But it's really about punishing people that they don't like. And I'll say this is also why the Free State movement is so important, is because libertarians need their own tribe. And it's not working nationally. Libertarians need their own tribe as well. But right now, a lot of this it's about tribal dominance. And the fact that it's about public health, I think that's pretend.
Well, it's the problem with libertarianism is that people are individualist. Collectivists naturally have people who will get behind them and say, just tell me what to do and I'm down. Whereas libertarians are mostly like, don't you tell me what to do.
So have you found like decentralized methods to unify individuals?
Well, the Free State movement is pretty decentralized. So I'll give a little bit of legalese here. The Free State Project, which is the organization that I'm representing, all we are is the marketing department. We don't engage politically. All we do is try to talk about how awesome New Hampshire is for libertarians. The Free State Project is 1/100th of what the Free State movement represents. So I'm like BLM Inc., and then you've got the Free State movement, right? Like when someone puts that BLM sign and decides to hold a rally, they didn't consort with BLM Inc. They just did it on their own. And so most of what happens in New Hampshire is bottom up. It's decentralized. Is there fighting between some of the libertarians? Of course there is. You can't get 3 libertarians in a room without them, fighting each other. But I think it's by far the most successful libertarian movement out there. And the nature of it is it selects for people that want to win. It doesn't select for people who want to be, popular online or want to go into their, DC crowd and be friendly with people that are their enemies or that want to dominate them. It selects for people who want to actually achieve, who actually want to win. And I don't think you're going to find a movement that's much more effective.
Have you experimented with like decentralized voting for localized voting, like on apps and things like that, and finance with tokens and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I love that stuff. Of course, you would have to actually change New Hampshire laws to get that. One thing that does exist in New Hampshire, because there's seriously 100 different organizations that play these kinds of bottom-up roles, and I'll give you an example of one that's related to that. There's a group called Liberty Ballot, and for people I hate voting. I think voting's dumb. I don't want to vote, honestly. I like the idea. My ideal society is that of restaurants. I have no say on what's on the menu, but I have the choice of where I want to eat. Competitive dictatorship, but I want to support free staters, so I vote when I'm in New Hampshire. I don't pay attention to politicians. I go onto a website called Liberty Ballot. It's run by free staters. Free staters do the job of parsing all the candidates and saying these are the Liberty ones, and I go in and I just check the box for who they tell me to vote for. And so there's so many institutions and organizations like this that are filling all these roles that make the movement successful.
That sounds crazy to me.
Which?
Like not knowing who you're voting for?
Well, I trust the people who researched it. You can't. I mean, like it's no different than any other consumer decision. Like I don't know everything about I trust reviews. I trust things that I trust. Like people trust you, right? You say something on your show, they trust you. They know that you're authentic and real and honest, and they trust what you say. So so someone, if your friend said, "Hey, this guy's a really good guy," vote for him. You trust what your friend says.
That's usually because I'm like, you guys got to make sure you fact check this one and do your own research. You shouldn't just blindly follow.
And they'd say the same thing. And if they get it wrong, there are people who will criticize them in forums and stuff like that. It's not a process without feedback. But like, I don't want to pay attention to politics, right? That's not that's not my thing. I think politics is mostly dumb. I mean, I want to win, so I have to engage in it, right? But I don't really like politics, and so if someone else that I trust is willing to do that research and identify the candidates that share my values, why not outsource it? Why not free ride?
Peer review is very powerful for like anonymous social media. If you want to be anonymous online, but you have enough peers that can verify that based on what your account's doing, that is Ian Crossland, then you can kind of trust that it's me without knowing who I am.
Yeah, that's what identity is. Identity is all statements that other people make, right? Like my ID is the New Hampshire government saying that I'm Jeremy Kauffman.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.